So heavy built-on carbon deposits on my number 9 Field griddle. What's the best way to get this off? Hi, I'm Jed. This is Cook Culture. So this is my number 9 griddle. I've had this for several years since the number 9 first came out. I was sent one by Field as soon as they were available. I've used this thing extensively. Pancakes and crepes. That's been this pan's job. I've done a ton of pancakes and crepes. Crepes are one of my kids' favorites, but what I've found with doing something that's so fibrous like pancakes and crepes is that I have a ton of really heavy carbon buildup around the edge. I use gas at home. This licks up over the side and I'm cooking stuff on. So I've got some really built up carbon buildup on this pan. As best as I try to keep this thing clean, it cooks on while I'm cooking, and then as best as I even go with my chainmail, it's really hard, and just over time, it's built up and built up. So that happens. That's just the name of the game with using carbon or cast iron. And so now what do I do with it? So lots of tools in my tool chest that I could go at this pan, but one thing that I haven't done yet that I'm really excited to try, and I'm gonna this weekend start a nice big fire and get a whole bunch of the downfall on a bunch of things and burn for my Sunday afternoon. And in that process, I'm going to put this guy into the fire and just burn this thing as hard as I possibly can. I'm really interested to know, will that incredible hot heat, as hot as I can make this fire, will I be able to char and dry all of this really hard caked on seasoning off here, or carbon off here? And will it turn into a newish type pan? Will I be able to get this thing basically to new sort of level? So it's exciting. I'm excited. Let's start a fire. Okay, so here we are on the beach. A nice pallet fire. I didn't have a lot of deadfall, so we're gonna be burning some pallets. And here is the number 9. So I'm gonna let this guy burn down a little bit, get a nice, really hot core center, and then get this right in the middle. So probably in about 10 minutes, this guy will go in for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. I don't know, I'm just gonna leave it in for a while until it all burns down and then pull it out once it's cold. Okay, so the fire is burning down. The number 9 is deep in the fire. I've sent a note to Stephen Muscarella, the owner of Field. He's kind of concerned with what I'm doing with his pans, but we'll see how this all works out. I'm pretty confident that this is going to be positive in some way, but the fire is super hot, and I'm just going to let this burn down overnight, and in the morning I'm going to pull this pan out and then take it into the workshop, and we're going to get to work reconditioning it. Okay, so here's the pan. It definitely looks worked over, so I'll show you a close-up here. It has a lot of bonfire crud on it that I am now going to take it to the sink and work this off and see what comes out from underneath this thing. It looks pretty beat up, and it doesn't actually look like it's going to be in very good shape, but it's just kind of ugly and dirty. So it may clean up, but right now I'm a tiny bit worried. So let's take it to the sink and see what happens. Okay, so here we are at the sink. I've got some Barkeeper's Friend. I don't know if we need that or not, but we're gonna get this guy cleaned off. It's got some little bit of rust on it here and there. Ooh. Definitely carbon off of it. Ooh, clean it up pretty well. All right, so this is kind of first look at it, and it's kind of mottled and a little bit ugly. It's ugly on the bottom, but that's it. That's exciting. So I'm gonna give this guy a good clean up, and then we'll get it dry and onto this stovetop, and we're gonna look at getting this thing post-seasoned. Okay, so this pan is actually pretty clean. It doesn't look fantastic because it needs to be seasoned. It's somewhat exposed iron, somewhat little bit of still stuck on seasoning. It's got some discoloration from the fire. And so I wouldn't recommend doing this. This is working out quite well. This is looking fantastic, but I have warped this pan. This pan is not flat anymore, unfortunately. So I don't know if when it was sitting in the fire and it got so hot that it was sitting
kind of leveraged somehow and it just got a little bit warped, or just from the extreme heat, it warped it. I think that maybe I might be able to get it back into shape if I was to do the same thing and try to either rest it differently or whichever, but whatever I'm going to do into the future, what I've done by going so hot in this fire that definitely cooked off all of that carbon, I have misshapen this pan. And that's disappointing, but you know, I'm trying to experiment here to see the best way to go forward to be able to solve these situations of having a lot of built-on carbon. What's the easiest way to look after it? If building a fire and putting a pan in it is a good way to do it, then that's a great solution. That's what I'm trying to figure out. So I may do the same thing, or I will do the same thing again with a different pan and not cook it for so long. I left this pan for a long time. I left this overnight in the hot embers, and maybe I would do something maybe for half an hour or 45 minutes and see if that does it. So that'll be experiment number 2. But this one here, I've got a slight warp that I'll show you right here. And so it's not a big deal. This is going to work just fine for me on gas and induction. A little bit of warp. It is warped from top to bottom or from end to end, so it doesn't spin, which is really nice. So if it has a little bit of rock if I do rock it, but actually just I think using this pan, it's not going to be an issue. But you know, the end result is not perfect, so I'm not suggesting to do this the way that I've done this so far. It is fascinating to see that much heat is definitely going to take off an incredibly hard built-on deep carbon deposit, that all the simple processes of using easy off, or even just putting the oven for a long period of time, or using vinegar or whichever, those just don't work with that much depth and time of carbon. When you get really solid, thick, built up carbon, you need to do something more intense. I usually use a lye bath that works very well, but it's caustic. It can burn the skin, it can burn the eyes. It's a dangerous thing to use, so that is something that a lot of people are apprehensive of. I was trying to find here a nice simple solution. So I think I'm halfway there. I'm going to try this again in a different video, and we'll see if I can do something that is easier and faster. But the next stage that we're going to do here is that we're going to make this pan look the way we want it to. So Field, they cook their seasoning at quite a high temperature. I usually cook my seasoning around 400 degrees, 375 degrees. I'm going to go up to 500 degrees, 550 degrees, and season this in the oven. So we're going to do that a few times, and we're going to get it back to the way that it should look. Okay, so the pan is done. I've got some other close-up of it right here. So the pan turned out really good. The only issue is a slight rock from the heat, I guess. Interestingly, as I mentioned before, I was talking to Stephen Muscarella, who owns Field, about this process that, just to be really clear, this is not condoned by Field. They're not at any way saying that this is a way to maintain your cookware. This is something that I'm doing independently at my own risk to my own cookware to just find out if this works well or not. So just really clear about this. This is not a Field condoned thing, something that Stephen was actually quite concerned that I was doing with his cookware, but he was also interested in my results. So he wasn't surprised that I got a bit of a warp out of them. He says that if any of the cookware is going to change shape with heat, it's going to be the griddle pan, and it did. But surprisingly, the warp, or not the warp, but the shift in the pan, or a little bit of movement, is there. So just to show you, the pan here, the brand new Field griddle that I have, has a little bit of a wiggle to it, and the one that I did in the fire has, probably 3 times that amount. So quite a bit. But I don't think this is going to affect the way in which it's going to work at all. So I'm going to heat up this pan, and I'm going to make a little bit of crepe. I've made some crepe batter, so we're going to do that right now. Here we go. Not the most beautiful looking crepe in the world, but it's done its job. So there is the crepe. Okay, so the pan is working beautifully. It's seasoned. I seasoned this about 5 times in the oven over a full day, and it now is in great shape. It looks like it would after a couple of weeks of use when it was brand new. All of the carbon buildup is gone. It's a beautiful surface. Everything's great. There's a little bit of misshape to the pan. It's got a bit of a rock. That doesn't affect it, the way it cooks at all. So it's working well. It's not perfect though. That was not a perfect method. I do need to continue to test this method. I need to try this again. Anybody who's had some success at this, let me know. Point out where I went wrong here. Was it too much heat? I'm happy. I think this pan's gonna now work for me for many more years going forward until I have to do something again to it. Maybe it'll be a lye bath in the future, or maybe I'll have figured this fire method out. But I'm gonna keep going at this. So this is not the last video on the fire method. I do like this. This is simple and easy, something that you could do at home yourself. And that's what I'm really trying to find here, is what is the easiest method for you to totally strip down your pans and start from scratch when you've got heavy carbon buildup. If you don't allow it to get heavy buildup and you strip down, more often than I did with this pan, then you don't run into this kind of extreme measure of having to really take it down with something really aggressive. So more constant maintenance is better than going for such long periods in between. But I hope you enjoyed this. Hope it was helpful. Any questions, any comments, please leave them below. Thanks.